Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will be presenting on the Connecticut College Arboretum, our community partnership. Before we start, we'll quickly go around and introduce ourselves, starting with Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby Lennox. I'm a sophomore and an econ and math major at Con.
Hi, I'm Tuan, class of 2022, majoring in econs.
Hello, I'm Spida, class of 2023, and I'm double majoring in Econ and International Relations.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm in the class of 2023, and I'm majoring in Environmental Studies and minoring in Botany.
Hello, I'm Simon Moreira. I'm class of 2022, and I'm majoring in Economics and double minoring in Computer Science and Environmental Science.
Hi, I'm Nathan Morgan Kitch. I'm a senior and I'm majoring in biology.
And I'm Eric Huber. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in computer science and economics.
We want to begin by acknowledging and honoring the Mashantucket Pequots, Eastern Pequots, Western Neantic, and Mohegan peoples past and present, whose land the Connecticut College Arboretum and the college itself now reside on. The Arboretum was originally established in 1931 on 64 acres of land, and 20 acres of that land was dedicated to the native plants collection. The rich history of the land is apparent while exploring the Arboretum. For example, you might notice some stone walls, which are left over from agricultural practices. Professors in Connecticut College's history are largely responsible for how the Arboretum has expanded and come to be what it is today. So some of those professors include Dr. Black, Dr. Avery, Dr. Goodwin, and Dr. Nearing, and you also might recognize some of those names from around campus. And the faculty, in addition to the Arboretum staff, are responsible for such detailed records of the Arboretum's development. I want to draw your attention to the two images on the screen. So the rightmost was taken in 1934 and the one on the left was taken in 1993, and you can really see how the landscape has transformed. So the region was really affected from deforestation, and clearly the photo on the right is even before the 1938 hurricane, which also caused a lot of tree loss. But the size of the Arboretum has grown, and so has its tree collection. And during Dr. Goodwin's time at the college, the Arboretum grew by 350 acres, and by 1996, the Arboretum included all 750 acres of Con's campus. Today, the Arboretum has 3 plant collections and is a level 3 accredited Arboretum, and this growth is really centered in Connecticut College and the greater New London community, and was catalyzed through a lot of education. Slide, please. Teaching is a major component of the activities that utilize the Arboretum, with over 30 courses being taught using the spaces. However, education in the Arboretum isn't only limited to Con students, and there's a lot of public education opportunities. The Arboretum offers guided tours of the different plant collections, and they host events, educational and also scavenger hunts and stuff like that. Conservation is a really important pillar in the Arboretum's history and in its current goals, with over 200 acres of the Arboretum dedicated as natural areas. Some of that natural area includes Mammacoke Island and the Bullswood Forest, where we focused our grant application. And in these areas, human disturbance is limited, and so the areas are open to recreational use and research, but they aren't manicured or maintained to the same level as some of the other areas of the Arboretum. But that still means that we need to include trail maintenance. And so the Mammacoke Conservation Area is also recognized as an important bird area in Connecticut. So it's critically important for the habitat for many bird populations, including species of duck that spend like the winters up there.
As we know, now more than ever, it is important to be aware of our environment and how we treat it. And so this quote from the Connecticut College Arboretum encompasses the idea by showing the vast biodiversity of it that it contains. And in the first sentence, as of June 2016, the native plant collection contains a total of 2,427 ascension plants, including 335 taxa groups of 1,039 trees, 1,353 shrubs, and 35 woody vines native to eastern North America and hardy in southeastern Connecticut. And so it shows the importance it is to take care of and conserve the environment we have. And more importantly, it demonstrates how essential the Arboretum is to the Connecticut College community and the greater London area. And so on this map, it shows the entirety of the Connecticut College Arboretum. And our main focus for our grant is the nature and jogging trails behind the athletic center all the way to Mamako, as you can see on this side of the screen.
Our goals for the project started off by us thinking about some issues that we wanted to work on, which included runoff, erosion from river and rain, compaction due to trail use, and invasive species growing on trails. The solutions to these issues for this project were implementing water bars to prevent erosion, building stairs, boardwalks, and other aids over unfriendly trail segments, and reconstructing trails to manage vegetation. The goals we had in order to benefit the community were making the trails more accessible, and we can do this by creating better access points for the Coast Guard Academy students and directions from the Athletic Center for Connecticut College students, as well as posting maps at community entry points with distances of trails. We could also reach out to the students in order to get more use out of the trails and really utilize the entire Arboretum from west to east, and implement clear directions on the trails or arrows and signage so that a community member would have easy wayfinding aids along the trail at map-marked checkpoints so that they would know where to go. With the grant, the project would allow the Arboretum to obtain funds in order to hire a work crew to revitalize the clearing away invasive species on the trail and reassessing soil quality. We really wanted to connect students across different schools and have a nature path along the Thames waterfront and provide community members to have an accessible and high quality path to experience nature as well. We want to spread the use of the Arboretum across the waterfront and bring together different communities for this project and obtaining funds.
Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the specific grant that we're interested in applying for to do this project. So the grant that we ended up researching was called the Connecticut Recreational Trails Grant Program. And this is a grant that's funded by a portion of Connecticut's government, and that would be the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And the funding that this department provides is generated through a gasoline tax on off-highway vehicles. And generally, the groups that this grant program provides funding to are in 4 categories. So first, they provide funding to private nonprofit organizations. They also provide funding to just general municipalities, to state departments, and to tribal governments. And the grant itself is to provide funding up to $1 million. And this $1 million can pay for up to 80% of the total project costs, and it requires a 20% match on that funding. That could be through the organization itself, or it could also be from funding from other related grants. Next slide. So some of the general goals and information about this grant. So it's mainly focused on supporting different types of trail projects across the state of Connecticut. So that includes planning, designing, and constructing new trails. It includes the maintenance and restoration of existing trails. That's where our project would specifically fall under. It also supports the access to trails by people with disabilities, provides funding for the purchase of trail construction and maintenance equipment, which would also be relevant to our group. The acquisition of land for trails, and it also promotes educational programs related to safety and environmental protection. And some of the general goals or values of the recreational trails program kind of over the long term include ensuring the continuity and linkage of trail systems across the state of Connecticut, the develop areas for all trail users in the state, ensure public participation in and support of state trails programs, to ensure construction and maintenance of trails in an environmentally sound manner, and to utilize trails as an educational venue. And all of these are really relevant to our project. So next slide. So now to talk about some of the specific requirements of this grant. So it requires some general information and applicant information. So this includes like the type of project, whether it's trail maintenance, new trail construction, purchase of construction equipment. It also includes a section about the total project costs and how much of this cost is requested for the specific grant. And then there's the bulk of the application. It's about the project information. So that requires some narrative addressing the scope of the project, why there is a need for it, and who it will serve. So this is kind of the community's benefit of the project and why our group thinks that it would be a beneficial project to complete. It also includes project maps, grant selection criteria, which includes things like, are there any endangered species on this land that we need to be aware of, or is this in a coastal flood zone, a different criteria like that. And then site suitability and accessibility, public participation in the project, some letters of support, general cost estimates, and a maintenance plan. And then finally, it includes any supporting documents that you need and an applicant certification. Next slide.
So you guys just heard from Abby and Eric on how are the goals of the project, and it's a big goal. But as you can see, the Arboretum already have 9 full-time ground staff who have experience in this kind of work, and with an amazing team that had operated since 1931 that know how to manage the land and the trails. And so this project is kind of a bigger work for them on their regular doings. And yeah, if the combined experience of the staff is not enough, the team also know other organizations in the areas who can help them when they meet difficulties, and they can also reach out to the college for help, and the college can make this to become like an internship that could possibly save funding and create opportunity for students to engage in the project. And in addition, for trail maintenance, the Arboretum team already have the right equipment to carry out the job, and so all they need is additional labors. Next slide, please. And talking about management, we have the amazing director, Miles. I don't know how to say his last and first name, but he had worked before at the Arnold Arboretum in Harvard University, and he also holds a doctorate degree in horticulture from Cornell University, so he knows what he's doing. And so, yeah, with addition to the amazing director, we also have the support from the college, from the community, from the sustainability programs who have been giving out funding to students and classes for sustainable projects. And so they can help with the Arboretum team if they ever need help on the project, the trail maintenance that they are doing. And also the New London City have its Department of Recreation that have a lot of experience with this kind of work, and the team can reach out to them, and for sure they will help. Next slide, please.
So now we want to talk about some of the benefits that we discovered through our research. First, as Simon mentioned, like there are a lot of native species in the Arboretum, and like these species are very important, but there is a threat to them, which are the invasive species, and trail maintenance is very important to prevent the spread of invasive species because invasive species tend to grow on the diameters of a trail. So it is very important to keep the trails maintained to avoid their spread. And then, according to a study that was done on the Mammoth Marsh, the sea levels don't really affect the vegetation and erosion. They don't cause erosion because the Mammoth Marsh is protected by the Thames River, which makes our project sustainable. And also, when we're going to maintain the trails, it shouldn't cost as much as like whether if it was being done in another area because the quality of soil is good. Next slide, please. And then some of the social and health benefits. So it's important to choose the right area. It has to be in a low crime area so that more people would feel like using these trails and then benefiting from the health benefits. So using recreational trails is a very effective method to combat childhood obesity. And it's also cuts the cost and time of exercise, which makes people more likely to like exercise, and also provides a space for people who don't really like exercising in closed spaces such as the gym to have the opportunity to exercise. The other point was about demographics. We have noticed that due to the accessibility aspect of it, usually the age group is not that diverse, and also people of color don't really have a lot of access to the Connecticut College Arboretum trails, and we're hoping that by adding multiple access points, it would benefit a larger group of people. And then like two similar projects that the New London got funding for from our same grant were they got over $265 of funding to connect the city of New London to Fort Tumble, and then also they got $61,000 funding to connect the Connecticut College to Ocean Beach Park and all the other places along the way, which are all like projects related to accessibility, which is very similar to what we're trying to do. And overall, having great trails would raise the awareness of environmental issues within the Connecticut College community and would motivate the students to volunteer and work hard in order to maintain them. Next slide, please.
All right, now we're going to be looking at some of the economic benefits to recreation in general and recreational trails. First and foremost, you have green GDP, GDP standing for gross domestic product, which is a measure of what is valuable about nature, excluding goods and services that are already captured in GDP. Green GDP is much more difficult to measure than standard GDP, as natural resources that benefit individuals don't come in prepackaged units as you would see with more traditional goods. Regardless of this difficulty, however, it's obvious that nature is valuable and it provides a benefit to us as individuals through recreational activities. This can even be seen, especially this year during the COVID-19 pandemic, as students are much more active in the Arboretum than what I have personally seen in previous years. How exactly recreational activities can be seen as of a 2017 report, where outdoor recreational activities generated $887 billion annually. Furthermore, these outdoor recreational activities generate millions in jobs. And these jobs help. Investing in outdoor recreational activities can also, in smaller towns, lead to growing the local recreational economy, which can then also lead in a sort of positive feedback loop to the revitalization of Main Street as people invest in local economies and efforts and increase interest in conservation efforts. This will then foster a shared stewardship natural resources from public and private relationships. Finally, looking at an article in Nature done focusing on China, they noted that even if GDP were inversely related to the amount of nature, when natural capital decreases, the standard of living decreases as well. Many other studies have also noted how having a larger, what you could call a green footprint, so thinking about kind of the number of trees in urban areas, is extremely beneficial to people's health and livelihood and well-being. And this article, as I said before, is focused on China, and they're making efforts to merge economic and natural wealth by quantifying it as a gross environmental product. And so the further we invest in nature, the further we invest in our local economies and our greater economy as a whole. Next slide, please. Lastly, we have some of the outstanding requirements for our grant. All of these requirements are to be completed by our community partner. First of all is the applicant certification. There's also project cost estimates, including the total amount requested, which is up to 80% of total project cost if we have covered earlier. There's the grant administrator information, the full scope of the work that we are planning on getting done, letters of support, and finally, a maintenance plan.
Thank you all for joining our presentation, and we can take questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. What we'll do is definitely open it up for questions. We'll have about 5 minutes for that. I'm going to paste again the presentation feedback form. If you don't have a chance to, ask your question in general, you can put it in there and I'll pass it along. But you guys are already seeing the pattern. If we could give this group a round of applause before we open for questions. Good job, Connecticut Arboretum group. Well done. Really interesting. Now we'll open it up for questions for the next few minutes.
Yeah, I have a question for it. Okay, go ahead.
I'll play moderator here. We'll go with first Angela, and then we'll go with Miles, if that's all right.
All right. Actually, I have two questions. First and foremost, were you guys aware that when you have grant applications, one of the things that you can write into a grant for matching funds, like they're requesting 20% matching funds, is actually putting a dollar value on volunteer hours and volunteer manpower. Anything else that's volunteer, it has a value. So you'd have to look up, different levels of volunteering and kind of search out what kind of value they give to each type. Someone like your professor being involved in this and the people who were involved in this that you did not pay for their opinions, that has a dollar value going into a grant. So that's something to think about. And then actually, one of my questions is, did you guys actually do any of the actual work towards putting in the grant? Or did you just do the research background on it?
So for the most part, we just did the research on it and started to fill out some of the grant requirements. But since this grant, the deadline is towards the end of the year, there wouldn't be funding until the end of basically 2021. So the grant itself couldn't be filled out at this time. But we started to fill in some of the information and the requirements for it.
Okay. Which is something I would say is important for everyone. And I did tell my group was that look at the submission windows for grants when you are looking. Some grants are annual, some grants are biannual, every 5 years, 10 years. It just depends. So that's also when you're looking for things. But thank you.
So I just wanted to chime in here and thank the group so much for all the work they did on this. It was great to see the presentation and see all the hard work and dedication and time you put into it. It was wonderful working with everyone, and great to see what you developed. So the question that I have for you, now that you've spent some time thinking about these trails and with getting people out there and accessibility, one of the biggest questions that I have for the group is, what are the top 1 to 3 things that you think we could do if we received the grant or in the near term to make the trails more accessible, 1 to the Connecticut College community and 2 to the broader New London community?
What I personally think would be extremely important. I know part of the goal of the Arboretum is to do a lot more community outreach and have much more community involvement. And I think it's important. One of the studies that we did not talk about covered how it was done in Ohio, and it was covering how the demographics of people who use trails, and what they noted is that the majority of the people who utilize these trails were white people, considering that Connecticut, that New London, Connecticut has a very large Latinx population. I personally think it would be very important to try and reach out to that population and encourage them to not only participate in whatever community activities are planned for the future, but also encouraging like the use of the Arboretum. I use the Arboretum quite frequently just to walk, to cool my head, all of these kind of things. So I just think it'd be important to reach out to communities of color and encourage participation in nature, because I feel like that's not something that's often done.
And also to add on to that, I think it'd be really cool to see like more collaboration between students at Connecticut College and like students in the elementary, middle, and high schools in the New London area. And maybe like there's some educational opportunities there and collaborative opportunities in using the Arboretum as a space in an outdoor education space.